Well, today we're going to do the book called Focus on the Crocus. Here it is. Focus on the crocus. See that little flower? That's the first little flower that comes out in the spring each year, pretty much all over the United States. It comes out with the daffodils, and it's the first little flower that you will see pop up even in the snow as the snow is melting. So we'll find out why this is called Focus on the Crocus. But anyway, the main thing about this book is our focus. Are we going to be focused and fixated on all the negative that's around us? Or are we going to keep our eyes on Jesus and His Word and what He says and who He says we are? That's what we need to do. And I know it's really hard, especially during our dark seasons. It's really hard. It's really a challenge to keep our mind focused on the right things. But it really matters because your emotions will follow what you're thinking. So let's start reading this book. By the way, if you'd like a copy of this book, it's just a little mini book. There it is. See that little crocus? It's a crocus, not a focus. Sorry. But if you would like a copy, just email me at Marykean, MARYKEAN, at q.com. Marykean at q.com. And give me your address so I can mail it to you. So here we go. I'm going to put my glasses on. Focus on the crocus. As my friend was pulling out of her driveway, she noticed the horrible mess in her neighbor's yard, which was often a source of agitation. At the same time, her daughter shouted with excitement at her discovery of the season's first flower right near their walk. A beautiful, perfect crocus. The first sign of spring, like the daffodil. Immediately, my friend was humbled by seeing the small, seemingly insignificant flower. She had a choice. She could zoom in on the negative site next door, or she could focus on the crocus. How many times do we have similar opportunities that can make or break our day? Some may call it looking at the glass half full, as opposed to half empty. But we all have choices we can make in our daily lives that affect the way we think and act. The good, the bad, and the ugly. There is an illustration in the book of Proverbs that says, "Where no oxen are, the crib is clean, but much increase is by the strength of the ox." That's in Proverbs 14, verse 4. During King Solomon's time, oxen were very useful animals in farming. They were also used as sacrifice offerings. The crib was the pen they lived in, the stall, their living quarters, as it were. Without oxen, the crib would stay nice and clean, but with the oxen, the stall was a smelly, dirty, yucky place. It needed to be cleaned daily. However, the ox was a blessing because it provided strength in plowing, in carrying things, and in other ways. We know we don't live in a perfect world. Amen. With every positive, there seems to be a negative lurking around. Yet we all know that God can turn the negative for our good. Genesis 50, verse 20. Where there's productivity, there are challenges. When we work with people, there are frustrations and demands. Have you ever noticed that? People can change. Yes, they can. People can change. Circumstances can change. There's a lot of good that outweighs the bad in these situations. Everything worth doing takes work. If you're going to have an ox, you're going to have a dirty pen. Where there are people, we'll find imperfections, but also strength and increase and good. Count the cost. Maybe that's one of the reasons Jesus said to count the cost before building a tower. It takes a lot of hard work, commitment, and effort, but the benefits outweigh the negatives. When someone wants to lose weight, A decision has to be made to go through what could be a difficult time of change until the end result is produced. We've heard success stories about men and women who have overcome the impossible odds, kept their eyes on the goal, the dream of their heart, and made it to the Olympics. Why? Because of their focus. Our attitude really does make a difference. I'm talking about choices and focusing with God vision in a situation. When God looks at impossibilities, he doesn't see failure, he sees opportunity. When he looks at lack, he sees potential. You might say, well, of course, he's God. But the creator of the universe lives within us if we have surrendered our hearts to Jesus Christ. He puts his desires in our hearts. He doesn't focus on the emptiness, but on what can be there. Everything about him is the opposite of lack. Plenty, abundance, fullness, sufficiency, supply, provision. And he wants those things for us. When we want to go to Hawaii or someplace we've dreamed about, we calculate the cost, weigh the pros and cons, and start packing our swimsuits. But what about the 8 to 12 hour flight just to get there? That's a long way from wherever you live in the United States. It's still a long way. We calculate the costs, weigh the pros and cons, start packing our swimsuits. And what about the 12 to 8 hour flight just to get there and the long drive to the airport? Not to forget the increased airport security and the fact that you really hate to fly anyway. But we think about the warm, sandy beaches and the salty, fragrant breezes as we imagine the soft, lulling surf in our minds and a whole week of rest. It's worth it. You have to think about that, though. Distractions. Martha, Martha, you are worried and troubled about many things, but one thing is needful. That's in Luke 10:41 through 42. This line comes from the account when Martha was serving Jesus at her house. Mary was sitting at the feet of Jesus listening while Martha served by herself. Mary was not serving. Martha was perturbed that Mary left her to serve alone. So she told Jesus how she felt. But he told her that she was distracted by all the serving. She was overoccupied, too busy with it. Serving wasn't a bad thing. It's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. She just got anxious about it to the point of frenzy, and it became a distraction to her from enjoying the Master's presence and his teaching. She might have been thinking, why do I have to do all the work? Where's help when I need it most? Why does Mary get to sit there and just do nothing? Martha was buzzing around like the Energizer bunny and not being all that happy about it. She could have stopped and smelled the proverbial roses, and the fragrance would have calmed her frenetic soul. We can make our own distractions, but the devil also sends distractions. So we can be sure of that. We make resolutions to spend more time with God, and suddenly there comes a distraction. We decide we're going to pray more, and here comes another distraction. And yes, sometimes it's a good thing that tries to distract us, but the idea is to get us off course. We may start with a good idea and get so distracted over it and obsessed that we forget the purpose and intent it was originally meant for, which was to draw us nearer and closer to God. That's when we need to let it go and worship at the feet of Jesus. What are our priorities? What's important anyway? I mean, really, during this season that we're in, what's important? What's really important? But one thing is needful, and Mary has chosen that good part, which shall not be taken away from her. Luke 10:42. Allowing God to show us what to do seems so contrary to our human way of figuring things out and calculating over and over again in our minds just how we're going to do something. Focus. What are we going to focus on? Martha had her focus on serving. Martha was out of focus. Compare not. We do not dare to classify or compare ourselves with some who commend themselves when they measure themselves by themselves and compare themselves with themselves. They are not wise. That would be 2 Corinthians 10, verse 12. One of the tricks of the enemy is to get us comparing ourselves with everybody on the block. I mean, after all, Brother Achievement doesn't do it this way, and look at him. He's a success. He worked for 7 days and got promoted to an executive position. Or what about Sister Fruitful, who exudes grace and intelligence and uncommon wisdom with every choice she makes? She's not only blessed, her marriage is heaven on earth, her children are angels personified, and her future is dazzling. If we compare ourselves to them, where's the glass half full in this picture? God made each of us so unique that no one else is quite like we are. We're better than a one-of-a-kind snowflake. Comparing ourselves with others just immobilizes and stops us from going forward or doing something new. Yes, it does.